Greetings, I'm your host, Jason Miles, and welcome to another episode of This is Revolution podcast for all the returning listeners and subscribers. Thank you so much for coming back. To those new to the channel, thank you for taking a moment to check us out. If you dig what we're doing, please hit the like and, of course, subscribe. That goes a long way in promoting the channel. Also, I want to add that wherever you are listening to or watching the show, there is a code for a 20% discount on a monthly subscription to Means TV. That's right. Starting this month in November, Means TV will start streaming all the TIR video essays exclusively, as well as hosting some of our shows. Means TV is a lefty TV station with tons of awesome socialist content that I myself enjoy. So don't forget to use that discount code. This is Revolution for 20% off. Let me pull it up right now. Bam! Right there on the screen. Code This is Revolution for 20% off a monthly subscription at Means TV. Also, here on TIR, you can gift a Patreon membership. What? Say? Oh, yeah. What better way to tell the people in your life you love them with the access to all the dick and fart jokes that lie behind the velvet paywall of the Champagne Room? So, if you haven't done that, you should do that now. Where is it? I thought I had a thing for it. Now it's apparently gone. I don't know where it went. Someone stole it. Well, we did have a thing for gifting Patreon, but wherever you're listening or watching, there should be a link in the description as well to be able to gift a Patreon membership. We are still waiting for our guest tonight, Alexander Herbert, who came up with this concept when we were talking. He said, I have this article. You need to come on the show to talk about it. And then I want to talk about the Lenin stuff too. I was like, okay, that's fine. Of course we can do that. And I was like, well, what are you going to call it? And he was working out a title. And he said, how about how porn helped Trump win? And I said, I'm sold. I don't even care what you say inside of the essay. Don't give a good goddamn. That title alone will get people to watch. I hope. Someone said already, and it was one of the funniest comments that I've seen in a while, that they were gooning. Yeah, this podcast has me edging. I was like, whoa. Oh, here it is right here. Sid Nanda says, I'm gooning to the concept of this podcast. Hilarious. And I hope you guys appreciate the thumbnail. I had to look through a lot of pornography and Trump dancing to get the perfect image that was YouTube safe. And what I thought was hilarious. And yes, someone called out, a patron called out that I did use those Abby Martin thirst trap videos for Champagne Room thumbnail. Why not? I mean, she put it out there. It's not like I stole it from the camera. Also, I want to send a quick shout out to Bay Area rapper Saphir, who recently passed away. For those unfamiliar with his music, many watching the show will remember him from his role as Cousin Harold, who gets killed in the drive-by in the film Menace to Society. Saphir was a fierce original voice in hip-hop and embodied what it is to be a Bay Cat. His freestyle on Casual's Fear Itself album and his eponymous release Boxcar Sessions are hip-hop classics. And if you haven't heard them, go check them out. And if you haven't heard them in a while, it might be time to revisit them. Saphir, you will be missed, but your music lives forever for as long as we have cloud-based access to it, sadly. Now, let's talk about what we're here to talk about, which is how porn helped Trump win. Welcome here to This is Revolution, where we dissect the cultural and political forces shaping our world. Tonight, we turn our lens toward the manosphere, a digital ecosystem infamous for its promotion of, quote, toxic masculinity and its role in shaping a generation of disaffected men. In his latest essay on Substack, Alexander Herbert explores how the manosphere not only perpetuates harmful stereotypes about gender, but also serves as a gateway for young men to embrace far right ideologies. As Herbert writes, quote, the manosphere thrives on a paradox. It offers salvation through traditional masculinity while entrenching its followers deeper into a cycle of victimhood and grievance, unquote. This growing subculture, often dismissed or ignored by the left, has become a powerful force in the cultural and political landscape. Young men, increasingly alienated from progressive spaces that stigmatize traditional masculinity. I was doing so well. So well. That stigmatize traditional masculinity are finding refuge in the manosphere's seductive narratives. Fitness and self help videos become gateways to ideologies steeped in misogyny and far right populism, effectively creating a pipeline from disillusionment to political radicalization. How did this toxic community contribute to Donald Trump's reelection? What lessons can the left learn about engaging with young men who feel ostracized? And what are the broader implications for democracy and gender politics? Tonight, we're joined by my very good friend and collaborator of sorts, Alexander Herbert, to explore these critical questions. This conversation promises to shed light on an often overlooked cultural phenomenon with profound implications for politics, gender, and society at large. Let's dive in. Please welcome my friend, Professor Alexander Herbert.
Oh man, I like this. Trump. I could just see Trump's hairline in the background here.
You can't see the picture of the porn lady that I found?
No, that's covered, but I could
That's
see
good.
Trump's like hairline. This is like,
No caked up women walking past Jason now to throw him off his game unless he has some windows open. Um, I don't, because that's just rude. And no, I'm not on location tonight. I'm in my home slash the studio. How are you, Professor Herbert?
I'm doing good. I just raced from teaching to come here. Um, what is that? The anti mustache returns. That's right. I'm back. It's more powerful than ever. Actually,
Um,
growing.
you wrote this piece, and I was telling people before you jumped on about when you hit me up and you didn't have a title for it yet. And I think before you even had it, before you finished the piece, I think I put the show up and just called it how porn helped Trump win.
Mhm.
Um, and you talk in your piece a bit about the manosphere. Um, you talk about Andrew Tate, which I think is maybe the most polarizing figure because people on the left know who he is, but there's way more people in this world that
Wow.
have as big, if not larger, followings than Andrew Tate, and they aren't as misogynistic. Would you
Yeah.
agree?
Yeah, and even Jake Paul is one of those characters
Yes,
that
he is.
I would put in the manosphere that has a giant following. That, although not as explicitly misogynistic, is probably just as right wing as Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate is kind of the the best example of somebody that exemplifies the manosphere in the sense that he came from this combat sport
Mhm.
background, became famous, and then through the manosphere, but then also became famous in being called out and put up for trial for the sex trafficking that kind of gave him the stature that I think he has today, and has kind of rode the coattails of, in a way. So yeah.
How would you say the manosphere has grown into a dominant subculture on platforms like YouTube and TikTok? What role does the ostracization of traditional masculinity in progressive spaces play in driving young men towards the manosphere, in your opinion?
So I think, you know, I I like to, I promote myself. I consider myself to be very masculine. I do believe that there are redeeming qualities, not just redeeming, but good qualities of masculinity that should be embraced rather than shamed. And thinking about this in light of the election, everybody was posting statistics and who was responsible and trying to assign blame in different categories. But the overwhelming reality was that men, no matter what race or background, had voted overwhelmingly for Donald Trump. And so I sort of saw that as the only thing that I could say was a definite political reality. Like, we could look at Latino men, can look at black men, yada yada. You can say that um, there's a lot of people didn't turn out to vote, whatever. But you could say definitely that men had voted for Trump. And so I wanted to understand this. And in particular, I kind of blended that with the question of, well, why is that? Was it sexism, right? Did men just reject Kamala Harris because she's a woman? And I still
Some.
don't believe that. I think that there were some, definitely. You can't deny both racism and sexism in the rejection of Kamala Harris, but I don't think that it was majority. I mean, there definitely that video of Judge Joe Brown calling Kamala Harris a hoe, which you would never see that kind of insult voiced to a man. Or, I had people around me that would say things like, I just don't like the way she laughs. It was like, what is
That's kind of lame.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, I mean, like, that to me was coded with sexism, even if these people didn't realize that that's what was going on.
mhm.
Um, but in any case, I wanted to understand masculinity, and in particular, a what I considered a sort of crisis in masculinity. And I meant that not in the way that, the some non-binary queer, you know, sub might say that there's a crisis in masculinity through toxic masculinity, but I wanted to consider that in light of masculinity itself, within the masculine, the people who proudly present themselves as masculine. And that meant from the start accepting certain stereotypes of what it means to be masculine. One of those things being physical fitness, right? I in the as the image for the article, I posted this um, uh, drawing from the Soviet Union of a dude, like flexing his muscles with a kid touching him. Physical fitness is one of these classic manifestations of masculinity. Profundity is another one, right? The aspiration to be profound, to be intelligent, to kind of intellectually dominate. Competitiveness is another one. I don't consider myself competitive, but I still recognize it as a dominant masculine trait. And then, of course, humor is another one. The striving of men to be funny. And if you've ever been on a dating website, you know that every profile says, "I'm looking for a funny man." And so, right, so there's a striving to be humorous. And so I took these kind of stereotypical qualities of what it meant to be masculine, and I started thinking about, well, where are those aspirations? Where are those expressions of masculinity being directed? More importantly, where are they being accepted? And what I thought of, both through, I had a poll on my Instagram page where I asked um, people who were born assigned male at birth to respond. Um, uh, that's right, dog. I'm into both physical fitness and look at that, dog. Yeah, I got the Um, and so you know, I I had this poll on my Instagram to sort of ask what experience cis assigned male at birth men had in traditional leftist spaces. And I got some responses of people being like, what do you mean by leftist space? Yada, yada. The typical example that I gave them was a queer cafe. So if you, as a man,
Mhm.
go into a queer cafe, you start like flexing your muscles, saying, you know, telling everyone there that you should join an MMA gym, and kind of asserting yourself in any of these kind of traditional masculine expressions, would you feel comfortable? And the overwhelming answer I got was no, not really. I sort of have to hide my masculine impulses when I go into these leftist spaces. And so I took that. I said, okay, if in the left these traditional forms of masculinity are usually shunned. You know, you get the whole like, you know, and an effort to be profound, you get labeled as mansplaining. And an effort to show your physical fitness, you might be labeled as ableist. That competitiveness or that sense of humor, well, maybe your sense of humor will offend someone because you ironically called something gay or something like that. But in any case, not typically accepted in a lot of these left spaces. So I figured, well, where is it accepted, right? Where is it rewarding to be physically fit, to try to be the most profound, to be competitive, and to be humorous? And that was overwhelmingly the manosphere, right? This place, it's made up, you know, it's not a real place, but it's constituted by a series of online influencers, men,
Mhm.
who proudly, openly embrace these traditional forms, expressions of masculinity, particularly physical fitness and profanity, right?
Can we agree? So, sorry to slow you down. I know you just got out of professing for God knows how long, so
Yeah.
you might be tired of talking. But there is something to be said about just watching just fitness videos. You and I both work out to some degree on our own. You don't have a personal trainer, right?
No.
Yeah, so we don't. You know, we're finding stuff on the internet or friends that we know that work out, like seriously work out. And when you watch these more serious videos, it is a direct pipeline to right-wing propaganda, even from some of the people that are like instructing you on how to lift, how to diet, how to break up your lifts. Real apolitical, almost innocuous talk
Hmm.
is a straight pipeline into this world of right ideology,
Yep.
and it's instantaneous. You know, also I watch fight videos, and if you watch any kind of combat sports videos, direct line to these people. And as I was saying earlier on, there's Andrew Tate is one person that, you know, kind of is a celebrity because he's so brash,
Hmm.
but it's the other people that don't do the Andrew Tate sex smuggling that are maybe more dangerous, because they have this almost philosophy like channel. Have you noticed this too? I
Yeah.
can't think of the people's names right now because I don't really know their names, but there's the white guy that kind of looks like you but more serious.
I don't know who that is.
I don't know his name. I think it's John something.
Hmm.
And he looks like an ex-marine or some shit. And he'll be talking to like
Yeah, I look like an ex-marine.
a little bit. You look like an ex-marine who used the GI Bill, um, and
Got
now is
got
a
honorably discharged very early on in my career, and then still benefited from veterans benefits. If only. If only.
but you know he's like a bald, like real short cut hair white guy. Anyway, he always has like maybe even like doctors on to talk about health,
Yeah.
and then he'll have like an Eric Weinstein on. But he'll also then he'll have like, you know, that bodybuilding doctor guy, the bald guy that looks like the Thing. I can't think of that guy's name. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
What is that guy's name?
I'm terrible with names. Um,
But you know who I'm talking about.
I know who you're talking
And
about.
that guy's really good when it comes to talking about lifting and how to lift and
Yeah.
what's important, you know, what not to do, what to do. But when you watch these things slowly, when you're watching the lift videos and you're watching them clown people in the gym who clown other people in the gym. The next thing you know, you start to hear them talk about the world, and you're like, you sound kind of fashy.
Yeah. Not only that, but when you start going to the gym, your phone picks up on the fact that you're going to the gym. And so if you're on social media, you start getting these videos without even asking, right? And so the pipeline is sort of built in there. And again, if you're a man and you want to talk to somebody about your lift, right? You want to talk about your gains
Yeah.
or whatever, talk about whatever creatine you're taking or whatever. You can't go to the queer cafe and talk to people about that.
I think you could talk to queer people about lifting, Alex. I think you're being a little mean with that one.
I am being mean, but I'm being,
Because those are the
I'm being
most ripped motherfuckers where I'm from.
as abrasive as Andrew Tate in saying that, you know, it's those forms of masculinity that are usually discouraged from a lot of left spaces. I mean, I have a friend who's a professional bodybuilder. He's like the fourth strongest man in Canada, who is routinely bullied within his group. I don't want to say what group, but within his group, not because he's mean or anything, but because people are intimidated by his bigness. He's huge, you know? Um, so, uh, but the real problem with this, and the reason why the article is called "How Porn Helped Trump Win." I mean, admittedly, it's kind of a clickbait title. We've got to get people to read somehow, but there is some truth to it in the sense that the political ideas, the ideology that's being then promoted by people like this, reinforced by even non-physically fit, traditionally masculine people like Jordan Peterson, for example, who really lean on the profundity aspect of masculinity rather than the physical fitness, is essentially a way of seeing women as objects, right?
Yes.
And so long as you see women as objects, you consider them to be easily bought, meaning that wealth becomes your signifier of success. You know, and I think I quoted Scarface in the article where I always forget the exact quote in the order, but it's something like
First
first
you get the sex. Well, first you get the money, then you get the power, then you get the women.
then you get the women. Yeah, and that becomes the ultimate aspiration of this version of masculinity that is incentivized, promoted by, you know, these people like Andrew Tate and them that are in the manosphere. Success becomes marked by your material affluence and you know your body count, which means that women are seen as objects that can be bought. And as I say in the article, porn confirms that assumption in many ways. I mean, porn actresses and actors are paid, you know, handsomely. They make a lot of money for the most part. And when you have figures like Trump, right, like Donald Trump, who have had these interactions with people like Stormy Daniels or the comments that he has said about women, it also further confirms the notion of your body, my choice, right? That I have the money to make your body my choice, what I want to
Yes.
do with it. And in that way, it confirms the view of women that the manosphere promotes. And in that way, it reinforces, you know, this, what I consider to be wrong, misleading, and downright kind of disgusting version of masculinity. One that, you know, it's easy to say, well, you know, the left has to reappropriate masculinity and demonstrate to people what it's like to be a quote unquote good man. But, you know, how do you do that? You know,
Mhm.
don't have an answer.
Um, in your essay, hold on, sorry. In your essay, you note the manosphere's appeal lies in its ability to transform grievance into identity and identity into political action. Can you expand on how this pipeline operates, its implications for young men, please?
I think that it just gives them an outlet in which they can freely express, um, you know, these traditional masculine impulses. I mean, what I wanted to write about, but I didn't get to because I've never personally like really been a part of it. But I have friends who are, you know, they play video games and they play these video games where they can stream each other and they talk so much shit to each other They say the most atrocious shit ever about, like I'm gonna come to your house and like shoot you. Like they're mean to each other.
Yeah, very
And they're
mean.
mean to strangers and stuff like that. But there's an aspect of masculinity that I think thinks that shit is funny, because it is funny. But again, you can't go into a queer cafe and start saying shit like that, because it's not accepted by the majority of people. But within masculine circles it is, which is why the majority of the people who responded to my poll, they said, yeah, there are jokes, there are expressions of masculinity that I don't feel comfortable expressing in certain places, because the humor will be misread, or because I'll be, as I said, blamed for mansplaining or being ableist or something like that. And so what happens then when that masculinity, which is almost impulsive, right? These are just things that boys want to do. Boys are competitive. And that's a simplification, but for argument's sake, I'm willing to make simplifications as long as we recognize that it's a simplification. So what happens when those forms of masculinity are alienated from left spaces? It means that the pipeline that's available to them are video games and this manosphere, these influencers that they find on social media, these people who seem to empower a sense of masculinity, that they then tie to a notion of femininity and womanhood as subjects.
That's another thing these guys do, and I don't know the name of the show, but I've seen their clips way too many times. And it's they have a desk, like a news desk, almost like a radio show desk. So I don't know if people remember what radio stations look like, but they'd always have like a big desk, and there's the hosts on one side, which are usually all men, and it's these white guys, really smug fucking white guys, and then they have like OnlyFans women on the other side, very young women. These guys have to be in their at least mid 30s with 20 somethings on the other side. And they just kind of berate these women, to your point, to prove that they're kind of all for sale.
Yeah.
And no matter what
They're
these
dumb,
women
or they're
say,
all for sale. I've seen a lot of memes where it's like the choosy interviews on the street where some dude asks a woman, where's the Great Wall of China, and she says in Cuba or something like that.
yeah,
Which is like 1 in 1,000 interviews that this guy took, found somebody who for whatever reason just didn't know, and used that to say women are stupid. And because they're stupid, then they can be bought easily. They're subject to wealth. And it seems, and this is another point that I make, when you see people like Andrew Tate that promote, or they flash the women around them. Andrew Tate likes to brag a lot about how many women he slept with and how he treats them. And when you're one of these boys, right, that discovers Andrew Tate, and you see him surrounded by women, that seems to confirm the notion that women can be bought, right? It's because it's there, it's in front of you. If you're a teenage boy and you're seeing that, you're like, well, maybe Andrew Tate is right. Maybe women are inferior, and all they want is money.
sounds like all the ones I know.
So,
Whoa.
so there are forms of confirmation in this manosphere version of what women are, what women want, that that I think is dangerous. Yeah, and the question is, how do you get out of that? How do you undo that? How do you make it so that these forms of masculinity that boys are interested in exploring, more welcoming within the left and less exclusionary?
Would you say there's kind of an ecosystem, though, that's built around, and it's not even a left or right ecosystem. This is kind of part of that apolitical thing, that where I think these manosphere guys come in as superheroes of videos of women saying their their space is being violated. So you see women at a bar and a guy walks up and talks to her, and there's a video of her. Look at this guy fucking bothering me. I'm just trying to be at the bar with my friends and not be bothered by some man. Or the onslaught of gym videos of someone working out with, probably doing crazy lifts. Like, we have to be honest. If you're a male or a female, regardless of what you're wearing, if you're doing a really cool lift or a workout I've never seen, I'm probably going to stare because I'm either learning from it, I'm impressed by it. And it's not always that I want to fuck it. But there's tons of videos like that of men behaving badly, let's say. And these men come in to the rescue, if you will, for a generation of young people that don't know how to talk to people in person because of things like you said, these interactions online filled with profanity that doesn't translate well in the real world. You can't really talk to people like that.
Yeah. I've seen some of those videos where a guy will kind of, and actually the one that I saw, I didn't think that it was like toxically masculine. It was actually kind of refreshing. It was, it was a video of a girl that had her tripod set up at the gym in a very convenient location, where she could see people that were looking at her. It was like reflecting in a mirror. And like, she used that video to say like, "You men are gross, they're checking me out of the gym." And the guy like interrupted the video and he's like, "Let's dissect what's going on here. Like, let's dissect where you strategically put this tripod to capture men who are watching you do an exercise that is outrageous, right? It's a ridiculous exercise that nobody else does in the gym except for you in the effort to get this attention." And so, I mean, stuff like that I think is fine because it's not necessarily political, but as much as it's saying, there's an artificiality to the whole thing. That being said, when those critiques become a condemnation of femininity as stupid or inferior, I think that's when the problem emerges. And it's a very fine line. It doesn't take much for that to happen. But yeah,
We have a question here. Would Che Guevara have been in the manosphere?
I don't think. Well, if we're defining the manosphere as a place of the right, then no. Che Guevara probably would have occupied the same virtual place as Hassan, right? And for all his faults, he's not a perfect person. I don't even follow him, but I know who he is. For all of his faults, right? He is somebody that does embody these forms of masculinity, but is on the left. And I don't agree with him on everything, but I do think that I'm not willing to criticize him publicly because I do think that people like him should exist. More people like him should exist. And so, I consider him a comrade, even though, like I said, I don't agree with everything he said. I'm unwilling to criticize him. And the same goes for anybody who is broadly on the left, who is trying to break into this right-wing manosphere. And so that's probably where I would put Che Guevara if I had to.
Why does the manosphere consistently frame leftist ideologies as cultural Marxism? How does this narrative fuel anti-progressive sentiment?
I think because they don't know what they don't know what Marxism is. B, they see cultural they see cultural shifts that are occurring, and particularly white men. This kind of great replacement theory, and they have no way of explaining that other than to say this is some kind of wokeism, this cultural Marxism. I mean, there's that debate with who was it, Jordan Peterson and Slavoj Žižek.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think if I remember correctly, Žižek asked him, "What is cultural Marxism?" And he couldn't answer, right? Because Jordan Peterson if he read Marx, it was probably not anything in depth, or maybe just profoundly misunderstood it because he's a philosopher and not a economist or a revolutionary in any way. And so that to me kind of best exemplified when people like Elon Musk or even Joe Rogan talk about cultural Marxism. If they bring it up, my assumption is that they don't know what Marxism is, but what they're doing is conflating identity politics, I'll say progressive, liberal identity politics with leftism, Marxism.
Mhm.
They're two different things. I mean, if there is nowhere in Marx where liberal identity politics comes forth. In fact, even the place where Marx does, I mean, I haven't read every little thing from Marx, but what I have read, there are moments where Marx says that people are not separated. One framework that he looks at is the nation. He says that the proletariat is a nationless people, right? They are a conglomerate of international workers without a nation, without loyalty to the nation. And so I think he would assume the same thing for different identities as well. So this whole notion of cultural Marxism doesn't really, hold weight to me. I just think it's
What do
made
they
up.
mean? What do you think they mean by cultural Marxism?
Wokeism. I think that they mean liberal identity politics and the type of identity politics that, to their credit, is exclusionary. So even the exclusion of this certain form of masculinity that I'm talking about is wrapped up in this notion of cultural Marxism. But what they're really referring to is an exclusionary type of identity politics in which people are canceled or called out based on some anti-woke position that they have. Cancel culture type stuff is what they mean, because I think that they also conflate Marxist politics with things like or cancel culture with something like terror, like political terror, right? That to be canceled in 2024 is to be guillotined in 1792, right?
Yeah.
And so they're kind of conflating that revolutionary impulse to terror with cancellation, and I think that has to do with it as well.
Is it working?
It's working in the sense that the best viral leftist influencer that I could give you is Hassan. I mean, to that extent, it is working. There just aren't really competitors with him. And so, and part of that reason is, and somebody in the chat even said, Hassan is a Stalinist. I don't give a fuck if he's a Stalinist. I don't care.
I think that's a joke because Hassan to me is just a liberal, which is what it is. What it is. He's not a bad guy.
It says Hassan is Stalin. I don't give a fuck if somebody in the chat is, Jason is a Maoist. I don't give a fuck
What does that mean?
I don't care what 100-year-old debate Jason or Hassan ascribe to, where they fall in line with international revolution versus socialism in one country. I don't give a shit, because the fact is that we just don't have power. And when you don't have power, you don't have the luxury of infighting. I will say that when I first started getting into leftist politics politically and organizing, after I got over my obsession with punk rock, when that was done, I will say, I joined the Communist Party of the United States, and at first I was on the kind of warpath, going after DSA, going after the RevComs, going after Maoists. But the older I get and the more kind of closeted I realize that all of this leftism is, the more I don't care, right? I want to see socialists, and the Trotskyists even, I don't care. I want to see socialists gain power first. Once you have that power, then by all means, go at it, fight each other. Who cares? But you don't have that yet. You barely even, I mean, I think a communist I heard read a position on a school board in Vermont.
Hmm.
You know, some DSA members have won local legislative offices, even here in Rhode Island, but I
Good.
imagine in other states. And like, good for them, you know. But that's not power. It might be local power in a way, but it's not national power. And so once you have that power, then by all means debate. But for right now, I don't care if you're a Trotskyist. I don't care if you're a Maoist. What kind of label you want to call
Ascribe
yourself?
to.
It
Yeah,
just
it's a lot to me. It's a lot of cosplay bullshit because
yeah,
identity and branding is so important, and even the left internet space, how you want to brand yourself
yeah,
is more important than people want to believe.
yeah.
And it's to some degree been an Achilles heel of this show because we don't necessarily have a branding per se. Um, so you know, people get
And
mad
that
that they
that
don't know where to put you.
that impulse to branding, that impulse to identify,
Mhm.
is more bourgeois and liberal than leftists want to give themselves credit for. Because in reality, you're branding yourself just like Adidas is branding its shoes. Um, you are, I don't know, branding yourself just like Nike is it's Jordans. You know what I mean? You're putting that symbol on you, and I grew up doing that. I mean, like I said, I grew up listening to punk and hardcore, so I always had patches.
That's kind of the premise of the thing we're writing is I went to see a friend play who was our tour manager in Brazil, and he's playing with this punk band, and they came to San Diego, and he had posted a flyer online of the show, but it didn't have an address. So I went looking and I couldn't find the address of the venue. It's not listed anywhere.
Mhm.
And it's one of those venues that doesn't put it's more common than people think, but they just didn't have the address. And when I was young, I thought that shit was cool. As a person just trying to get to a show, I think it's retarded because this is a touring band and less people are going to see them now because you have to have the exclusivity that the same person that you hate, right? The rich and powerful are all about exclusivity.
Mhm.
And you're going to adopt that because you don't want any uncool people in your fucking underground space. They weren't
Yeah,
selling beer there, so it wasn't a big deal. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But it's shit like that. That there's an elitist nature to this shit that people kind of ignore.
And that, yeah, that shit exists. I mean, it's very self-destructive on the left, and I guess that's the point that even the article is getting at, that the alienation of masculinity, particularly these young boys that need to find an outlet to express that masculinity, the outright rejection of that is self-destructive in every sense. Now, of course, I don't even like the term toxic masculinity, because I think that, behaviors, opinions are socially constructed, right? They're not inherited. And so there is a raw form of masculinity. If you could kind of strip it down of its social layers, and you could say, okay, well, what does a healthy form of masculinity look like? And that's a conversation that I think is worth having to try to cultivate, because, this is what I consider the crisis of masculinity, really, which is that not only are these boys kind of fed through this pipeline, but if they ever come around and realize that, people like Andrew Tate are fuckwads, it's usually too late. They're in their mid to late 30s or their 40s or their 50s by the time they kind of have this left political awakening. Um, and it's, their energy has run out in that sense.
Well,
Not all,
that
not
leads
all.
to the next question I have for you. How has Trump's persona resonated with the manosphere's ideals of alpha masculinity? What specific messaging or policies help can cement his support within this community? In your
Well, again,
opinion?
I think that his position on women, the interactions that he's had, the whole Stormy Daniels trial, now this shit with Matt Gaetz, for example, and his, trying to promote him to um, uh, what was it? I forget. My brain is foggy right now.
Attorney General or something? I
Attorney
forget.
General, yeah.
He
Trying to
declined. Yeah, yeah.
trying to promote him to Attorney General. I think again it confirms these notions of what femininity is as opposed to masculinity as promoted within the manosphere, as promoted within this cycle of masculinity. So that masculinity is Jake Paul having his arm around his, super attractive girlfriend, and then at the end of the most rigged fight of his life, saying, "This one's for all the cops and the police officers and those first responders." And America is reaching a turning point, blah blah blah, and like spewing all of this stuff that boys watch and they're like, "Fuck yeah, man, cops are cool."
I beat the most vicious black man in the history of niggerdom, and I just want you to know this for all the cops: you can beat these niggers fair and square. I did it.
That was fucked up, man.
Nigger was scared of me. Sorry.
I do have to say, this is my conspiracy. I do have to say that booty shot of Mike Tyson, I think it was on purpose. I guarantee you he was because for Mike Tyson, it's like, I'm making money. Like I'm not going to have to do anything the rest of my life if I get the $20 million from this. So he's probably like, America can kiss my ass. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to actually turn around, capture my ass so that all of America can see it. I guarantee you that that's what happened, because Mike Tyson's a pretty smart guy, despite,
He is. And I think because he's a smart guy, watching him, and I did the Champagne Room on Tuesday night, I actually did a whole spiel on this because my co-host for the sports show, Mac, did not want to talk about it because we were both pretty upset about the fight. But I saw it as more of, I think they probably had a bit of a gentleman's agreement to not go too hard, but I think Mike Tyson is the ultimate wild card, and Jake Paul was a little afraid. And if you watch that first round, Mike Tyson hits Jake Paul so hard that Jake Paul runs sideways in a way I've never seen a human run in a boxing ring before. And then Tyson starts biting his gloves and then lies and says it's something he's always done, which, I can't speak to that. But as someone that's watched my fair share of Tyson fights live before the loss to Buster Douglas, I don't remember that, mainly because he was just so quick. When would he have time to do that? The head movement that guy had with that peekaboo style was just on another level. It felt like watching him walk into the ring was a man that knew that whatever legacy he had left, which he got rehabilitated through, and I don't care what anyone says, this is my theory.
Yeah, I don't think his legacy
through the internet, because his boxing legacy before the internet, those of us that watched him knew he never beat anybody really of note. Maybe the most notable fight he had is against Larry Holmes when he's 21 and Larry Holmes is 38. So there's not too many people Mike Tyson had destroyed that were fighters that we talk about to this day. He never had that legendary fight like the heavyweights of an era before. He actually comes to prominence in the downtime of heavyweight fighters and kind of boxing in general. And when he loses to a journeyman in Buster Douglas. Then he goes to prison. He comes back and fights Evander Holyfield and loses twice, and then he's beat by Lennox Lewis, and after that he's defeated by a series of journeymen. And his last fight, he doesn't even come out of the corner. He's knocked out in the 6th round. So the fact that Jake Paul wanted to fight Mike Tyson, kind of like, there was a fight no one wanted, first and foremost, and second of all, it's a fight that no one should have wanted, because Jake Paul isn't a real fighter. He doesn't really fight fighters or boxers. And number two, Mike Tyson had shown you after he lost that he wasn't the devastating champion. If you're just imagining him through the video game where he's bigger than life, where this 5'9" man is the biggest thing on a video game, that's a different thing than the real fighter who had some issues.
There were, when the memes of the video game, the old Nintendo boxing ticket, that for me put the age thing into perspective, because people are throwing numbers like, oh, Mike Tyson's 58, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, all right, my mom's 59, so whatever. But when I saw the Nintendo video game thing, I was like, oh shit, I remember playing that game and being Mike Tyson.
And
And
Jake Paul is even younger than you by almost 10 years, Alex. So
yeah,
he has no memory of that video game. So
yeah,
he only knows Mike Tyson, the pop culture character in movies that's just supposed to be this wild man.
hmm,
Or maybe he's watched these collections of knockouts that make Mike Tyson look like the most devastating boxer of an era. If you've watched any sort of fight videos, after you're done watching this show, go look up on YouTube Mike Tyson videos, and you're going to see tons of these knockout compilations and videos talking about how he was the most devastating boxer of his time and blah, 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 blah. And then I asked this question on on the show. I was like, well, who did Tyson beat of note? And don't say Michael Spinks.
hmm,
Who did he beat of note? And no one can answer that question. They might answer with someone that beat him, like Lennox Lewis. It's like, nope, Lennox Lewis knocked him out. Who did he beat? And I'm not saying to say Mike Tyson is a bad fighter. He's a very good fighter. If that Negro knocked on my door right now, I'd grab my machete and try to kill him because I'm not trying to box with Mike Tyson. But this imagined idea of fighting Tyson as if he was the greatest fighter of all time, and
yeah,
then defeating this man that should be collecting a social security check at this point, and then using it as a platform to yell your allegiance to Trump, your allegiance to power and authority. And Jake Paul becomes the greatest heel villain since the godfather of heel villains, President Donald Trump. It's
yeah.
almost like this guy is setting himself up to be president in the next 10 years.
Coincidentally, to go on the theme of this episode, I don't think this microphone's on. Whatever, you can
I
still
can
hear
hear
me.
you well.
Go on the theme of this episode. I saw coincidentally that Andrew Tate had said that he would fight Jake Paul and teach him a lesson. Because again, that's the masculinity, that's the competitive impulse, right? That's the physical fitness and the competitive impulse, the sign of manhood, is that you have to do that. Yeah, but yeah, Jake Paul, like, I don't doubt that he's watched plenty of boxing matches, right? Especially while he was training. I'm sure that he watched a lot of Mike Tyson matches too. I even saw him, do an interview where he was asked, "Who are your top? What boxers would you take what aspects from?" And he had a decent list, but he's not a good fighter by any means. And even I think Dana White did a press conference where he was asked about it, and Dana White was like, he's not a real fighter. He's never fought a real boxer that's his age in his weight class.
That's a
And when
box.
he did once. And when he did, he was destroyed.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean,
This is why I'm confused on this whole world, right? Because it's all a bunch of fiction. And I think what we're used to seeing and what the manosphere has been able to do is, doesn't matter if we're right or wrong. It doesn't matter if we're just sprouting off bullshit. If we present in a professional fashion and we can find these goofy broads to yell at or demean, we can prove how right we are.
yep.
Like Jake Paul, for a lot of people, they're going to be like, but he won. I'm like, and? Like, who beats up on it? Mike Tyson never said, for me to really be champion, I got to beat the shit out of Muhammad Ali, who's got to be about 70 years old right now. Like, that'll really prove to the world that I'm number one. Like, that's not how that works.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's not one sport where we go, in my prime, I want to fight you in your retirement. Golf, that doesn't happen. There's like not one sport where you compare people at that level, because we all understand that, well, maybe if you fought him back then,
It's just a money grab.
Sure. But
And
how do you make something that ludicrous a money grab? And I think first and foremost, you build up on what I think is kind of a bit of a racist depiction of Mike Tyson, the animal. And you're going to tame the animal. Even the slap which I felt was very contrived. Their weigh-in slap.
Mhm.
All the pre-fight stuff you've seen of Mike Tyson, for the most part, he was really quiet until Cus D'Amato dies and he gets out of prison. When he gets out of prison is when he has my favorite pre-fight meltdown, where he tells a reporter that asks a question he doesn't like that he is going to fuck him until he loves him.
Oh
Which,
yeah, what?
to this day, you can never say anything that mean. Like, never can you say
Yeah.
anything that mean. That's a lot of fucking.
Yeah, I've seen that response. I mean, yeah, I think I agree with you about the sort of racist stereotypes behind the depictions of Mike Tyson and how that reinforced the whole thing. I also just think that, and Jake Paul said it at the end of the fight. He's good at what he does, and that is to market things. That is to be the influencer. And he even said, like, they ask him, who are you going to fight next? He says, it don't matter to me, but whoever wants to sign on to it, they know where the money is, right? I'll make them the money. That's all he's good for. That's all he's
And he became the most powerful guy in combat sports after that fight, because he proved that a fight no one asked for, he can facilitate, but he's also not retarded. He fought 58-year-old Mike Tyson, who in an interview maybe 3 or 4 years prior, Mike Tyson was doing Jake Paul's podcast in person. Jake Paul goes, Mike, I want to fight you. Mike Tyson goes, oh man, you're like 20 something, man. I'm like 30, 40 years older than me. You'd kill me in the ring. I can't fight you. Mike Tyson literally told Jake Paul that in an interview in front of him. And and to ignore that and be on this like, golly gee willikers, if I just had one wish, tee-hee, this'll legitimize me.
This motherfucker used to do commercials and shit for Disney Channel. So he is exactly what you're saying. He is that G. Willikers type. And that's what he's from. And so fighting Mike Tyson on a Netflix premiere of boxing was the absolute pinnacle of what he's always done. The power pole. Yeah, and so in any case,
sorry, poor Alex. Don't look at the screen.
Yeah, actually the chat is more active this time than last time.
Well, you're a celebrity now, so we have a few hundred people watching right now.
Well, follow me on Instagram for pictures with my shirt off in true masculine fashion at the gym. I go to the gym and I show off my muscles.
He does. I follow him on Instagram, and I can attest.
I'm not lying about it. So go ahead, follow me.
I will not post any pictures of me with no clothes on. I do have a slew of them to monitor my progress.
Dog, I'm getting ripped. I'm bench pressing like 235.
No shit.
Yeah,
I'm jealous, dude. I haven't been to a real gym in a couple of years, like 3-4 years.
Yeah, big. They call me Professor McBuff now.
Are you being serious?
No, I'm not.
Oh.
But the football players in my classes, they gotta do respect for me because they can tell that I lift. Sometimes I wear those shirts that are a little too tight, and they're like, "How much you lifting?" And I'm like, "Your mom."
I'm lifting that big bitch.
Yeah, that male humor.
I'm out here lifting hefty hoes. What you got to say about it, buddy?
Am I shirtless and reading Lenin at the same time? No, it'd be uncomfortable. I don't like being shirtless, to be honest.
You live in a cold city, that's why.
Yeah, I actually, I don't want to say. I have an interview somewhere that's not New England, a job interview. I don't want to say where yet.
Omar has one of the best comments I've seen, and shout out to Omar for this. I will say it is unfortunate that we never saw Tyson fight Holyfield or Lennox Lewis in 88 or 89. That's very true. That's very true. Had he not lost to Buster Douglas, we would have seen that. The Buster Douglas loss set off a chain reaction for that poor man that I will say destroyed his life. I think he's never been the same. I think Mike Tyson is also a character in a lot of people's imagination that is to be looked at like a zoo animal. So he's never really had the opportunity to have a normal life.
Yeah. I mean, he literally was on a comedy that made fun of him, and it seemed like he either didn't know it or he got paid. I don't think he got paid a lot for being on Adult Swim in this high
Probably
school
not a lot,
thing.
but that was funny because it was
It
a
was
mock off Mr.
hilarious.
T.
It's
You,
hilarious,
yeah,
but it's also like they're making fun of him, making fun of him. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, like I said, I think Mike Tyson is actually incredibly smart. I think his brain is a little fucked up from years of boxing, but as most boxers, you know,
the
I did
drugs didn't help.
boxing. I did boxing for a little bit, but I got out of it because my brain was too valuable for me. They didn't want to do it anymore.
It's a tough sport, and
Fun, actually.
you know, remember Mike Tyson? Like his whole life, he was the most popular man in everywhere, maybe in the world at one point in time, because he had devastating power. He was the youngest heavyweight champion. He married a woman from TV just because he wanted to. And then again, it just kind of goes downhill once he starts to
Yeah.
get a lot of success. And then some people could say it's Customato, it's the Don King influence. It's probably a lot of things, but that man trying to live his own life away from the camera, he's been able to do it recently. And this fight kind of brought him back into the public imagination in a way that I didn't really feel good about. And then actually watching that farce
Mm-hmm.
um, really kind of broke me because I saw a man, in my opinion, the look on his face before and after the fight was like, and you know this look, I'm just doing this for my kids.
Yeah. It
I'm
was a
doing this.
defeated look. It was
Yeah.
kind of it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was regret, but it was more like, I don't really want to be here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That was the first fight I saw him in where it was like, he's just here for his kids. And his answers after the fight, and I said this on the Champagne Room, we're also completely honest. They're like, would you do this again? He's like, I don't know if the situation arises. Like, I don't know if I fuck off this money again, maybe.
If I'm bankrupt again, then
Yeah.
I would. I'll fight when I'm 80. It would just be great. I do think that, you know, those first 2 rounds he did all right, but you could tell that he just got tired too.
I think also too, like we have to remember Jake Paul owns a gambling, or is a part owner of a gambling site as well. So I think they wanted to go the distance.
Yeah.
Um, you know, it just, the whole thing was not fun. The fight before it was one of the best fights I saw in a long time. And that woman, Amanda
Yeah, that was
Serrano,
good.
I believe was her name, she got robbed.
That was a
Um,
good fight.
but that was a damn good fight to watch. And it's kind of back to the original point of this, two men saying the best fight of the night was the fight right before the main fight, which was two women.
Mm-hmm.
There were other male fights. They just weren't of the caliber, and I don't think they had titles on the line like the female fight did.
Mm-hmm.
Women's basketball is more prominent right now in the college and the pro level to some extent. There was a fall off after Caitlin Clark's team fell off in the playoffs, but we're are we seeing women as equals, and the manosphere is the patriarchal stick to say no, we have to always draw this demarcating line, you chicks will never be equal?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's kind of a premature response, but I do think that, again, I think it's just a matter of masculine qualities in certain forms of, I guess, masculine energy, just not really having anywhere else to go. Um, and so they go to the right. Um, but, you know, whether or not, I think you're right that, you know, women's combat sports, for example. I mean, UFC has had women for a long time, but also their attention, at least in combat sports, also depends on their a lot of, again, these traditional masculine traits being embodied by women, um, that are part of the combat sport itself. In
Hmm.
basketball, I don't know. I don't watch the WNBA. I don't even watch the NBA.
I mean, Andy William has a good point. Low key MAGA victory party. The fights were the spectacle within the rally. I think this is also part of this cultural shift that you're talking about. That's very important. That I really feel like a lot of left voices I see them focused on the kind of leaning, more academic people like Ben Shapiro, and not so much on the people that don't talk about politics that much, like a Theo Vaughn. Like there's this viral clip of Stavros, the comedian, talking with Theo Vaughn, and Theo Vaughn does this kind of aw shucks right wingy shit, and Stavros pushes back quite hard on it and shows Theo Vaughn for kind of the idiot that he is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't see a lot of people talking about. Everyone could talk about Joe Rogan. Yeah, that's the most popular show, but number 2 is Theo Vaughn. Number 3 or 4 is this other right wing guy, and then it's Tucker Carlson. So these voices are still extremely potent. When we go to YouTube, it's none of us in the top 10
Yeah.
when it comes to left voices. And a lot of these people get people interested because they are talking about things that people want to talk about, like the fight,
Mm-hmm.
like sports. Like,
Yeah.
should I use steroids? Should I not use steroids?
Nobody wants to debate who was right, Trotsky or Stalin. Nobody gives a fuck about that
Nobody.
shit.
That's a history lesson. Not everybody wants to get into. You know what I mean? But a lot of us can talk about fighting, football, working out, not working out, wanting to work out, eating right.
The thing that I want to point out is Theo Vaughn is an idiot, and I mean that in kind of a um, in sort of an innocent way. I mean, Joe Rogan at first advertised his show as it was a nonpartisan thing. He had Bernie on, he had, people from different, and he said, I'm not taking a side. I just want everybody's opinion to be out there and made. That has changed. And I think Theo Vaughn has that same kind of um, uh, country bumpkin dummy ignorance like facade that he has, and like somebody pointed out, he had Bernie Sanders on, he was agreeing with Bernie Sanders about most things. And I also wanted to point out that the world, especially the internet world, is very small. And I posted this on election day. I said it's my favorite day because it's when leftists realize just how small their world is. Everybody was excited for Claudia de la Cruz or Jill Stein, and they expected some kind of big turnout for third parties, and none of these people had big turnouts by any means. And so a lot of younger people on the left, they kind of realized that, like, oh shit, my 10,000 followers are actually nothing relative to the population of the United States. On the internet, you're the shit. You got 10,000 followers. You got a little blue ribbon or whatever the fuck it is. But in reality, your world is very small. Somebody pointed out Eddie from Midwestern Marks is big on fitness. Is that a way to go? I personally find it off-putting, but is that better than the manosphere? I say yes. I also have my beefs with Eddie. I don't agree with everything that the Midwestern Marks guys do and say. In particular, like the whole patriotic socialism thing, I think is kind of bunk. But again, they are socialists fundamentally. And so, in that sense, I'm willing to tolerate them, see them as comrades in this world in which we have no power. Because whether I'm right or they're right, what does it matter right now? You know what I mean? It doesn't make any difference. And so I feel the same way about Bernie Sanders and AOC. I don't agree with everything that Bernie Sanders and AOC do and say, but I appreciate the fact that they're in Congress doing something. And so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I think that they're good faith actors. I think fundamentally, Bernie Sanders, AOC are good faith actors, despite things that they've done, things that they said, or things that they've not said, or whatever. I think that they are fundamentally good faith actors. And so that, to me, more than whether or not we align specifically ideologically on every point, is more important from a position of having absolutely no power. I don't have the privilege, I don't have the luxury, I don't have the ability to be exclusionary of people who deviate from me in the slightest possible way. I don't care. I want socialists to be in local and federal government. And that's it.
I was just on GTA Thursday debate chat, but Ben can't compete with porn and Trump's win. Let's go. Thank you very much. It's from Matt Gilbert. Albert Herbert will be excused for his tardiness if he supplies us with another image of a very stacked AOC with those thangs thangin'.
What? I don't even know what that means.
Alex is so anti-fascist, his facial hair has to be so.
That's right.
High value men date the J.C. Penney catalog lingerie models. How do I become a high value man if that's the case?
That's a lie, actually. The most high value men that I know, I'm not really attracted to their partners because they take the low road, if you will. And it's kind of strategic and it's smart. I'll tell you, so I'll be honest with you. Sometimes the really attractive people don't have the best personalities, and so sometimes you have to chop down your standards a little bit to find happiness, if that's the form of happiness that you're looking for.
Did you have to? Okay, I'm just going to keep reading the wonderful comments that people have left during the show. Manosphere really took off during the pandemic. Captive audiences to influences. Thank you, DC Joe Black. That is very true.
Point. Yeah.
Great point. Alex is either into physical fitness or domination, judging by the equipment in the door frame. That's really funny because all you can see, like, it looks like hand. Yeah, I know what it is. You're doing lat pull downs, aren't you?
That's right. Yeah, I'm not into dom. Here's a hot take. I don't really believe in doms and subs. I think everybody is a switch. I think it's just a matter of if you're willing to let yourself be a sub or not. And I think a lot of that has to do with insecurities that are, again, bound up in masculinity. Boom.
That is from a man that likes to get pegged.
No, I don't. That I do not like. Actually, I've had I've gone on dates with people, and they have.
Stop it there. Don't you can save yourself. This is the main show. Just stop it there.
I've gone on dates with people.
Oh, you're gonna keep going. Okay.
And they've asked me, do you like to be pegged? And I say no. But it happens so frequently. Like, people ask that so frequently. And so I had to ask somebody. I was like, is this a real thing that, like, a lot of men are into? And she was like, yeah, but the problem is that most men don't say that they're into it until like 2 or 3 months into dating. And she's like, at that point, it feels extremely misleading because some women are really turned off by men who like to get pegged. But when they don't know for 3 or 4 months, then it's like, why didn't you tell me earlier? Now I'm fucking disgusted by you. So no, I don't like that myself. But hey, whatever you like, go do your thing. If you dig it, then by all means.
I'm trying to think of the casual conversation at your local way too expensive vegan eatery because it's Alex, and he's sitting there with this very attractive woman with like tattoos and septum piercing and bangs, and she just kind of leans over and is like, "Want me to strap one on to fuck you up the ass?"
No, whoa. Not how it came out. It was actually like, it's always a very kind of annoyed question, because you know how on first dates, I mean, I have a way of, like, and this isn't bragging or anything, but I have a way of, like, just kind of getting people to loosen up really quickly on a first date, and so that we get to a point where we're asking a bunch of joke questions and stuff like that. And so, people will be like, so you like to get pegged? And I'll be like, no. And then when it happened frequently enough, I was like, why does everyone ask that? do I look like somebody that wants to be pegged? Uh, and then like that's what she was like, no, but a lot of men do, and it's surprising. But again, like I said, if that's your thing, man, then
You never saw. Were you with us at night? We showed the video where the guy called in some show and talked about how he liked to get pegged because he stuck his finger up his ass when he was jerking off. And he found out that he goes, I didn't know there was a fun button up there. And he said, and he goes, and he's talking to these dudes about getting pegged. And he goes, bro, when you do it, guarantee double the net load.
Hey, man, there's no shame in that game. All right. That's what I'll say. There's no shame in that game. If that's what you want to do, then sure. But I do maintain what I said. There's no such thing as doms and subs. Everybody is a switch. It's just a matter of if you want to let go. I don't want a JCPenney model. I need a goth senorita.
There's a lot by me. There's so many.
I don't need either. I'll be independent. I'll be alone for the rest of my life, though.
I tried to say, people are saying, Alex, save it for the champagne.
I don't give a shit, dog.
Somebody said, what the fuck is this shit? They said, Marie says, men are disgusting, laughing my ass off. Well, I'm happy you're laughing your ass off. You should laugh your ass off.
Men are disgusting, and proudly
that needs to be the reality show that
you see, Marie, this is what I'm talking about. This is shaming masculinity in left spaces. Boom, it happened on the show in real time. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You are shaming Jason and I for making jokes that, maybe you don't find that funny, but we do. This is Jason and I shit talking each other on a gaming platform, and you just shamed us for it. That's why I can't go to the queer cafe and tell everyone to join an MMA gym. You proved it. Thank you, Marie. Fucking piece of shit.
Would you please stop yelling at the viewers of my show? Everyone that watches this show is a goddamn saint. You're all fucking saints.
Yeah,
don't listen to this fucking sinner over here that's got his fuck dungeon behind him with all of his ass fuck equipment.
He's right. I appreciate you. Thank you for validating and vindicating everything I've been talking about in this episode. I appreciate you. My Instagram is @punksaround. You can DM me privately and we'll have a conversation about masculinity and why men are disgusting.
Sitting out what the hell is a queer cafe?
Yo, this is real, dog.
We can't describe it because if we did, the cancellation would be like when the TV went off in the 80s and you just beep, and it's just the color bar.
I would have already happened as soon as I started talking about pegging. That should have happened already. If you're wondering what a queer cafe is, walk downtown in your local city, and when you see the pride flag flying outside,
go to the gentrified area of any major metropolitan city, and the most stylish cafe with what my friend's girlfriend calls millennial bait. That's where it is.
That's a good way of it.
Millennial bait, yeah.
Millennial bait.
Yeah.
My DMs are not open for those who want to peg. Sorry. No. I'm not doing that. No.
Well, look, the link to the champagne room is already up. If you are a YouTube paid subscriber, there's a link up for you. If you are a patron of this show, the link is up for the champagne room. It's very simple to get it. Patreon.com/BitterLakePresents. You can have a trial membership if you're new to what we do here.
You thought this was dirty. Wait till you come in the champagne room.
Literally and figuratively.
That's where Jason and I, gloves off, shit talk.
That's where Alex describes the queer cafe.
That's where I get into detail about the queer cafe. Yeah.
Thank you. Prairie Fire says I'm putting this episode on VHS. Oh my God, this is pretty funny. Mocha lattes and pictures of Joan Crawford everywhere. Someone says, Alex, that you have a tramp stamp on your lower back that says no entry.
You know, I've thought many times about getting a tattoo there. I mean, I have enough tattoos there. Well, I should have one there. But then the question is, what do I want there? No entry? No, I don't want that. But
exactly, because that's false advertising.
Something there that is witty. It's gonna be witty. That's the way I see it.
Like maybe the scale of a finger, and it says like anything bigger than this is too big to ride the ride or something. Like that.
No. Something. I'll figure it out. When I figure it out, I'll announce it on this show. What my lower back tattoo is going to be.
This is a good thing to have on your lower back. Gloves off, straps on. Let's go.
You guys are bullying me.
If you had that, if anyone had that, I don't care who or what you are, if you have that tattooed on you, that's fucking hilarious. Abandon all hope, all ye who enter here.
All right. Now we're getting somewhere.
That's this is also funny.
Turn over. Men at work.
These are pretty funny back tattoo quotes.
Yeah, you should all get these tattooed on your lower backs.
These are pretty
Employ
hilarious.
your local tattoo artists. Give them work. And
Thank you guys. Thank you guys very much. We'll be going to the champagne room shortly. Alex is going to give us a Lenin update on his 45 volumes of Lenin, where Alex has been reading in Russian. I want to add, he's not reading translated versions. These are original texts in Russian. Because you speak Russian. You're supposed to say I speak Russian.
Because I can.
Thank you guys so much. Leave your comments on how you feel the left should attack or handle the manosphere. I've heard people say things like, we need a liberal Joe Rogan, which I think is ridiculous. I think that person already exists. His name is John Oliver.
Yeah.
But realistically, is there a way to create our own propaganda machine? I don't know. But
Stop hating each other.
What'd you say?
Stop hating each other. That's it. Embrace the, and this sounds really corny, but embrace the love. I don't know. Parts about that late 60s, 70s hippie movement that were probably right, but for the wrong reasons.
I feel that. I feel every word you just said right now, and I'm being totally serious. And on that note, we are out.